presenting the right information to the right person at the right time. We started dropping balls. We started making, losing track of customers altogether. And that's when we realized that this just isn't going to work. I mean, it's a structural problem, not a people problem, and that's when we started to really look for other solutions out there. I think that HubSpot has done it's been great for us, but only on the sales and marketing. Like, we had no misconceptions about HubSpot possibly being configured for project management tools. Just like, never went down that road. That's something Songevity did in my days back there, which is they tried to configure Salesforce to be a project management tool, and it was horrible. I mean, it was just terrible. We had 80 Salesforce admins at one point trying to glue popsicle sticks together to make this thing work, and we had 30 or 40 project managers trying to also help make it work. And then, of course, it was an outsourced model, so the installers were all separate companies, and they all hated it. They couldn't, it didn't have a good field application, so you have all these people in the field trying to make updates, and it just didn't work. And so we never intended HubSpot to be sort of forced to be a project management tool. So that's when what we did as an interim step was create task lists in Google Sheets, right? And that has worked kind of okay for us, but we also know there's no way that's the end solution. So we've been customizing and building this project management tool that is sort of a task-oriented thing that is complex and asynchronous, where you can have different people working on the same project on different pieces at the same time. So anyway, I think like our biggest, over the last year, I think we've managed to come a long way in a year, but man, we hit a wall, and I wish we had seen that coming sooner. It would have been far less painful had we planned this in advance, knowing what we know now. We would have planned in advance much differently.
Yeah. How about you guys, Greg? Because you guys StraightUp had been building something in-house, and then that basically got scrapped, at least on the CRM side, and you guys have switched more to that buying. So you want to share with us some of your learnings and takeaways?
Yeah, since I've been at StraightUp, we're trying to use the tools that we have to their best capability, right? And I think before we bought Podio, we had entered into a contract with another vendor, and at the last minute, and it was one of the big ones we've been talking about in the CRM world, but we just realized that it wasn't right sized for us. It was going to take too much admin and be this like too much of a drain on resources to get all of the things exactly the way we wanted them to. So we picked a more middle range size product, and that has worked pretty well. It has a decent amount of configurability to it, but that configurability is not so burdensome on the other side. So that's one of our major war stories, is we had actually given a software company money to buy their product, and then like a week later was like, never mind. How much of that can we get back? Because we were mistaken, and this wasn't the right product for us. So that, you're try not to lock yourself in. You'll never have less information than you do right now, Yeah. So next week you will be smarter than you are this week. So
hopefully.
In building, you'll at least have more data to work with. Now, whether you turn that into knowledge and make wise decisions off of it is sort of on you, but you'll have access to more information this week than you did last week about what your needs are and stuff. So
I know. So we had Mike from StraightUp Solar that was going to be on the panel, and Greg is in his place, and which is good because now we have IT perspectives. But I know when I was talking to Mike, one of the guiding principles for them was like, we wanted to have the data, I will probably butcher this, but he used the term, the knowledge fusion. So the information and data at the point of decision making.
Oh, you did so well.
I remembered it from the very long acronym that ends up spelling out.
Yeah, KFAT POTUM. If you talk to Mike, who's my direct manager, for more than 10 minutes, you will hear that term, and it's really a guiding star for all of the strategic decisions that Mike makes. You know, he's an Air Force guy, so that's why he loves his acronyms as much as he does. But that's a really good one, and it means make sure that the right people have the right information at the right time. And I know one of the other panelists basically used those exact words, and I think the fact that that is a trend just coming up in this panel tells you a lot about how to evaluate something for your software stack. Is it going to conveniently collect the data that you need, and can you get it to the people who need to consume that data easily and quickly without multiple data entry, or you know, if you're building a stack and you're using multiple of the best in class products like Scott recommended, like do one thing and do it well, but also make sure that that thing that you're about to buy plays well with others, right? And can take that information and feed it to the place where you need it to go. And that's on you as a software consumer to make sure that you know where that data needs to go. So that way, when you're looking at demos or talking to other people, you can make sure to include that in your mental specifications for what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. And I know on the marketing side, we typically recommend to clients, like the advice we give is pick a tool that you think is going to scale with your business well for at least 2 or 3 years, because you don't want to be like ripping stuff out and replacing it. And hopefully it will scale with you beyond that. But like if it's not going to scale even that long, it's not worth it. So David, when you are talking to prospective customers for Solo, you get to see the software purchasing process from the vendor perspective. So where do you see people getting hung up in that process of buying a new software, and what are people, like your buyers' misconceptions about how they should be thinking about technology?
Yeah, I think that, and I blame the marketers for these technology companies more than I do the users, because you're not going to find any software that isn't like simple, plug and play, easy to use. Like it makes it sound like you hop in the car and turn the key and go. And we all know that in today's day and age, especially with the project management or CRM, which I mean, are some of the most complex softwares out there, it is not plug and play. It is very much tinker around for 4, 5, 6 months, and then you finally have your flows in place. So from my perspective, what I often find is that you have a lot of people that think they're just going to be able to buy, I'll use Solo example. We'll buy Solo, HubSpot, and this, and then we're going to turn them all on, and they're going to talk and play nice and work, and everything's going to be great. And they don't take into account just those huge learning curves and adoption curves that come with these softwares, and the difficulty and time it takes just to really make that tool work for you. And that's really the biggest thing I see, is just the misconception that everything is plug and play. And I think we see kind of these two like increasing curves up the graph, where the complexity of software is getting higher and higher, and also the expectation that the user will be more technologically savvy is growing higher and higher as well. So the assumption that you know technology better is growing with the difficulty and capabilities of the software. So that I think is the biggest thing, is that people are not understanding is what it takes to get it to work for you how you want.
Yeah, I think I've seen a shift where it used to be the technology gave you a competitive advantage and it was a differentiator, and it's become table stakes. Like if
yes,
you want to meet expectations, like this is just part of what you have to do these days. So,
yeah.
Scott, when you guys were developing Bodhi, did you build it like thinking, okay, well, we want this to be part of someone's tech stack? I mean, did that influence your product roadmap and how you built it?
Yeah, it did. It was when we were designing it a few years ago, we knew that first off, that the post-sale customer experience was a gap in the industry. So that's what we really wanted to focus on. But we also knew there were just dozens upon dozens of different CRM and project management software tools that solar companies were using. And like you said, they tend not to change them very often. And so what we decided to do was that we weren't going to be a CRM, we weren't going to be a project management software. Instead, you can think of Bodhi as that top layer that integrates with those CRMs or those project management tools, and then essentially is able to become that digital interface with the customer. And so this has allowed the solar companies that use us, our customers, to do is really still use the same tools that they have been using, that they like, hopefully, and still get all the benefits of a purposely built solar customer experience platform.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna share with you guys some questions that we've got coming in here. All right, so we have a question from Chris that asks, from what I've gathered, time of use and demand are being generalized in the software space. Are there plans to individualize proposals for customers with TOU or demand-based rate plans?
It's probably more geared towards solo, I imagine, being the proposal generation company here. But yes, we have, right now, we've had that implemented for a number of years. And we look at places like Salt River Project or APS in Arizona. You've got some in California. You even have some on the East Coast in North Carolina, South Carolina. So we have assumptions programmed in. The hard thing is that all of your different time of use and demand-based structures all operate on different time frames and different assumptions and different billing. And so what we have to do as a company to kind of, we don't want it to be a one size shoe fits all, but at a certain point, programming in all the individual data per half an hour at every customer in APS is a huge task. And then getting authorization from each and every client that you would want to create a proposal for to implement that into the proposal is a whole nother level. And then producing a proposal to give to the customer is a whole nother level. So it gets into quite a big thing. So what we've done is we've made a pretty specific model using average assumptions of most of these time of use and demand-based areas and rate plans. And then on top of that, we allow our clients to implement, load controllers and a few other metrics to kind of tweak those numbers to how they want. And then with even some clients, we've allowed them to give us a standard set of assumptions they want us to make, and we can factor those into their proposal as well. So specifically speaking of solo, we've made some really good headway in that. As time goes on, I love what Greg said, you're smarter each week and you know more each day. And as we're able to get more implementations and even APIs into our back end to improve some of that, we'll see the time of use and demand base and load controllers and battery modeling. We'll see all that stuff improve as time goes on.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks. We have a question from Nate. What software do you recommend for supply chain and forecasting for equipment needs? Is there a distributor that uses a good tool for this? Any thoughts?
Sorry, what was the question again?
What software do you recommend for supply chain and forecasting for equipment needs? Is there a distributor that uses a good tool for this?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't have an answer.
It's not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
Ryan, Greg, do you guys have examples?
I'll say we do not have an inventory management system. We have a strong relationship with our small parts partners. Like I think we use CED Green Tech, and we've worked hard at min maxes. So I think like the best way for us to manage our small parts inventory is setting min max on everything. So if you're familiar with that process, right, there's a minimum once the part reaches a minimum on the shelf, it's restocked to the maximum number, and if you have a good relationship with your distributor, they can come on a regular basis and restock for you. On the big pieces, we constantly watch it and manage it on a weekly basis. And we just do it with spreadsheets. It's not the best way. I think that, the other thing to say is if you can get a PPI relationship with your big suppliers, a pre-positioned inventory relationship where it's actually their inventory in your warehouse, that's probably the best solution for you. If you can't get a PPI deal done, we're still using spreadsheets, unfortunately.
And I'll be honest, to touch on Ryan's point a little bit, the amount of companies that I speak with that still use manual processes and spreadsheets or Excel or Google Sheets, it's a lot. There's a lot of companies that just realize they understand how long it takes to implement a technology in a service, and they know that they can use spreadsheets and it'll be quick and efficient. It works and it's trustworthy. And so there are a lot of people that I think are consistently shopping for something to fit that need while still having a really good system that works. And I see that a lot with people I talk to.
And there's one software I think that may fit into that Nate's question, which is it's a new software tool, Solar Success. It's specific. It's based off of NetSuite, but it's meant for larger companies and it's an ERP, so it does help with that. I think it does help with the inventory. But take a look at that. It's made by Blue Banyan, and the software tool itself is called Solar Success.
What about, this is from anonymous attendee, what about customer onboarding software? Is that built in-house by Freedom Solar and StraightUp Solar? And what about billing?
Okay, so I'll go first, Greg. So I would say the customer onboarding process is tricky. You're right to point this out, and because we have a home-built proposal tool, which the customer signs, and then the salesperson is required to complete the transaction in HubSpot, which triggers an invoice, and the invoice is sent from our AR department through QuickBooks. And it also transfers all the relevant ops information to our project management tool. So it's a big deal. It's a big point in the whole process. You're right to point it out. There's not a specific software that we use for that one point in the process, but it has to do with configuring HubSpot to identify the right information that you need to transfer to the ops project management tool, and also give the accounting department what they need, and then training your salespeople to do it the right way. I mean, yeah, I don't know of any software tools that are built to this unique thing, but it is a big part. It's a big focus on our team and making sure we get that little point right.
Yeah, it's straight up in that part of the cycle. Podio, just like Ryan's group uses HubSpot, right? Our CRM is sitting underneath that and sort of teeing off the information to a couple ancillary systems to help present the data in a little better way. Like we've got a form signature thing that will take data from Podio, put it into the right fields, and then ship it off to the customer for signature. And our newest part of that whole process that cleans up the customer facing side of things is actually Bodhi. And so that integrated platform is seems to be the way to go for us.
And then we just got a note from Nicholas Spear that he was recommending Rippling as an employee onboarding tool. So if that was a question at all, Rippling for employee onboarding.
All right. Regarding plug and play perception, would you say some of the issue is that companies don't actually have their own processes dialed in and they expect the software to create the processes for them? If so, what advice would you give to those companies? And I think Scott and David both have experience with this.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I was just gonna say, yes, that is a very, very, very common perception that I don't have to think about these things anymore because HubSpot thought about it for me and my job's done. And it just goes to show you that there's, I mean, no matter what software companies, and speaking of software companies, there's always some work to put into them. Nothing is as easy as they say. It just isn't, and there's no shortcuts and there's no corners, and you're never going to be able to buy a software and then boom, 10x sales and you're a millionaire the next week. That's what they love to tell us, but it just doesn't happen. So yes, I think that is a problem. And I've experienced that personally many times because we go through an onboarding process with our clients where we need to figure out kind of the hard facts about what they sell, panels, pricing, inverters, loan options, all this stuff. We build it into a template and then their reps request those proposals. And I have had some some humorous calls where I was on a call the other day, and a gentleman was upset with me that I didn't know his price per watt, and I didn't know his cost of goods sold, and I didn't know all these things that I would never know, you know. And I'm just like, well, you know, we're a software, but we don't know these things. You know, you could sell it $5, you could sell it $3, you could sell it $10. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but you need to know how much your things are costing you that you're planning on selling. And so, yes, there's a lot of companies that don't have processes dialed in, and they assume that when they get to that point where they need to make a decision in the software, it's going to say, based on you being you, it's this. And it just doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, let me add on to that. So there's one, and this question was actually from Ben Miller from Dividend Finance that asked this plug and play question, but there's two aspects. So what David just talking about was some companies don't have a very set or process. Other companies do have a set process, at least notionally has a set process. You ask their VP of Ops, and they're like, oh yeah, I've got this process. The question is, how well does the staff, does the company have a culture of following those processes themselves? Are the sales folks actually entering all the information into the CRM so that the next person is able to do their work efficiently? And then maybe in the project management side, are all those tasks being checked and projects being moved efficiently on time so that the next step can be done? So I think that is something that we see that a lot. And what I think what's really key is for the companies that we work with, because our software does work on the post-sale process, it's two things are key. One is to get the buy-in. So the company that's trying to implement the process, the top management needs to actually get the buy-in for the entire team. So all the different folks need to understand and agree that this process will be followed, and there's an expectation that that will be followed. But the buy-in is, we need to get the feedback to make sure that those people are like, okay, that actually makes sense. Then the second part that makes the folks actually adhere to this is that the simpler you can actually make the process, the better. And so what you'll do is you'll make sure that these processes become essentially like guides for your staff to follow. And then there will be cases, these particular exceptions that are outside of the norm. And that's when you hope that you've hired the right folks, that they can use their human talents to be able to solve those extreme or those outside cases appropriately. So it's both of those things that, I mean, maybe Greg and Ryan, you guys can talk to that too.
It's a thing for which there's no magic bullet. I can't like snap my fingers and have something go, know all the things that I don't know. It definitely is a process that takes work. But we like to look at it at StraightUp Solar as something beneficial to us and our future selves. If we dig into finding out what the unknowns are, before we embark on any software installation, we almost always try to do an exercise where we document our current process to as much detail as we can stand to do it, and then try to craft a future state version of that flow. So sort of envisioning the future sort of a thing, and then take that and write down all of the data elements that we'll need. Like, are we going to need kilowatt array size? Are we going to need number of panels? Like, make a detailed list of all of the pieces of data that you want to capture and who will find those things useful, and then use that to inform our software installation. And that's a really iterative process, but we do devote a chunk of time to it before we roll out any new process.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can add much to what's already been said. I kind of agree with everything. I think process has to come first, and it has to be required of your users. And you can make it easier on your users by either designing a tool or implementing a customized tool that makes it easy. and it has to be easy to interact with, and it has to be distilled down to the essence of what is necessary in order to then enforce, you must do these things. But it all starts with a process, right? And we spend a great deal of time on the process before we ever get into designing the software. I mean, it starts with a really detailed process for sure.
So if we've got people who are attending or watching the recording later and they're sitting there and they're like, all right, this all sounds awesome. I'm bought in on this idea of the tech stack. I need to go build this out. This sounds really complicated. And I think I've got the budget, but how much budget do I really need? How do I get started? What piece of advice would you give? Where does someone start with this? And any of you guys can jump in and take that answer. If you're aggressive, I'll mute you.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I would say it starts with, like, you got to develop a vision first. Like, what is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? Right. And I think that once you try to answer, what are you trying to accomplish? You're really answering, like, what is your biggest problem? And I think that it starts there, and then I think the very closely following that question is, like, where do you see this going in the next year or two? Are you trying to grow and scale your business, or are you trying to go into different markets? Are you trying to sell different products? Like, where are you going to go from here? Yeah, right. So what is your vision? It starts there. So I'll start with that. And then I would say, secondly, like, for us anyway, everything is sort of centered on the CRM. The CRM is not going to do everything for you. HubSpot is ours. It's not going to do it. Don't try to make it do everything, because it's not going to do it very well. But it is, like, you do need some sort of central tool that everything is going to touch.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would echo Ryan in saying, you need to decide your process, decide what you want to do, and find a software that suits that. Don't get a software and let it make those decisions for you, because then you're always going to be trying to figure it out. You're always going to be kind of chasing your tail. So I think Ryan said it really well. And I would just say too, you want to figure out your biggest component first, and then add items as you need it. And I typically, most companies I speak with, they start with their CRM or project management tool, because that's the central hub. That's the brain of the whole operation. And you can do, if you have your main customer management tool that can take you through everything, you can do a lot of the ancillary processes manually until you get to a point where you realize it's a big enough pain point that a software could save you a bunch of time or money. And I think a big thing too that a lot of people kind of devalue is their own time. And we see that, Solo, one of our pitches is that, it can save you a lot of time on some aspects of your business. And so if you're an owner or a director of sales or a sales manager or a COO, you can do a lot of processes yourself, but you have to evaluate at what point in your week do you want to be spending 20 hours doing this thing, or do you want to buy a software and pay $1,000 a month to buy yourself 20 more hours a week, which is 80 hours a month that you can make more of an impact with your business. And so I typically, when I'm talking with customers that are starting out their solar companies, it's more, get your central thing in place, do the manual processes you can until it gets to a point where your time is worth more than that monthly cost. Get a software that plugs into that, and then use your time to grow your business. And one thing I always love, I don't know if anyone ever watched the show, is with Marcus Lemonis, and I can't remember the name of the show, but he would, I can't remember. He'd always say, work on your business, not in your business. And that's something I talk with a lot of owners about, is you don't want to be working in your business. You want to be working on it. You're big picture. You're an owner. You're a director. Think about the growth and the future and your vision, like Ryan said, and then get there. Don't get caught up in the little things every day.
So Scott and Greg, we have got just a couple minutes left. So my final question for you two is, what does an ROI actually look like on a tech stack? Like, what does a success case look like? Because it is hard to quantify. You're like, my staff is less stressed, so we spent less on aspirin this month than office supplies. How do you guys look at that?
Take it away, Scott. Oh, I can go first. So one of the tools that I like to use, I'll post the link in the chat, is just this really handy visualization that one of my favorite webcomics people put together. Author's name is Randall Munroe, makes great visualizations, but this is one of them that I can show to people and ask, and it helps me have that conversation with somebody doing the work to say, how often do you do this thing per day? And then if you're looking at the visualizations inside the grid itself, tells me how long we as a company can spend trying to optimize that task or installing technology where we will come out ahead in the end over the course of 5 years, right? And there are other tools that do this. You could use a spreadsheet and do the math, but this this question of, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are we coming out ahead in the end by implementing this new software? And if you take the time to accurately try to estimate how long that rollout will take you, it's just a really simple framework to think about what's worth doing. The other high level advice I would have to people is keep a list of all of the stuff that you could do from a technology standpoint. We could implement a CRM, we could implement project management software, we could implement something to help the service guys, not have to use paper tickets anymore. Have that list and prioritize it, and that will really help you eat the elephant that is a tech stack one bite at a time, or better yet, build the solar array that is your tech stack one panel at a time.
Yeah, and I think what I can add there, because I think you're right that when you talk about efficiency, notionally it's relatively hard to really think about. It's like, how am I going to measure that? How do I evaluate the ROI? But one of the great things about having a integrated software stack is that you are starting to collect that data. And so dashboards can actually be created so that you can, from looking at that dashboard, if you are able to define the right KPIs, key performance indicators and then you got to give it time. You look at, is that going in the direction that you're expecting with this new implementation of software? And then second, is it, after a longer period of time, is it meeting the specific goals that you set out initially? I think that's going to be the best way to evaluate the ROI on a more quantitative level. But also, I definitely will say, don't discredit the fact that there are some qualitative feedback loops for having easy to use software that improves just the overall process and really boosts staff morale.
That was great. Well, we are out of time. So thank you guys so much for sharing. I shared everyone's LinkedIn profiles here, so if people want to reach out to you or connect, hopefully they've still got those links. And thank you to everyone who's attended. Hope you found this very useful. We will send out a recording of this, hopefully today, might be tomorrow. We'll try and get it out soon. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.